Nigeria's push for a decentralized electricity market is facing deadlock in 24 states as tariff structure and debt crisis threaten the contributions of subnational governments to the distressed sector. 2 years after the signing of the Electricity Act, only about 12 states have been granted regulatory autonomy. Still, operations of the 12 states, one-third of the subnationals, face serious crisis as inherent challenges overlooked in the sector constrain their operations. Electricity generation remains at about 4,000 megawatts, with none of the subnational governments able to add any new capacity to the grid. In the north, more states run to the Rural Electrification Agency to collaborate on alternative power, thereby weakening the national grid. Talking about the national grid, there is a concern that Nigeria may be plunged into darkness more frequently owing to grid collapses, which is expected to be frequent in the coming months. The Nigerian Independent System Operator, NISO, had blamed the recent shutdown of the grid on the tripping of a power generation company. Joining us to discuss the tariff structure and the debt crisis threatening the push for a decentralized electricity market and why Nigeria may face frequent grid collapses in the coming months is our dear guest in the house this morning. We had her earlier, Dr. Joy Ogaji. You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Dr. Ogaji, good to have you here. Two outstanding issues. One, legacy debt, which at a time was put at 5.6 trillion, with a threat that it could get up to 6 trillion, with Genco saying they are adversely impacted by this, legacy debt. And then the federal government intervened, and there was an attempt to reconcile, to audit the various claims. Where are we with that? The second thing is about the grid that is always collapsing, and the threat at a point to disconnect the Gencos from the national grid if they do not follow certain directives by the Electricity Regulatory Commission. Where are we with that?
Thank you so much for those two questions. I think those two questions can actually qualify for a PhD thesis, because by the time you break it down, but within the short time allotted for this discussion, I will just quickly go to discuss the first one. Where are we on the increasing debt, which threatens the operations of the generation companies, not just the generation companies, but the banking system, the gas suppliers, and other interrelated creditors to the Gencos, like the lenders. I'm sure in the studio, you may have discussed threats of receivership on some of the generation companies by banks. They took loans on acquisition. So it's not just threatening Gencos, it's actually a threat, is an existential threat on the Nigerian economy, considering the role of power in economic development. Having said that, from our last discussion, I mentioned in the studio, joining from Abuja, that as at August, our current receivable in debt has grown to 5.6 trillion. Looking at a monthly shortfall of 200 billion every month, if you calculate that. Further to that, we have written to the Minister of Finance, Power, the SA Energy, NBET, and also the Chief of Staff to the President, highlighting the meeting we had with the President on the 25th of July, that we need updates, because from 25th of July to September is quite a while. And given that the President said it's just few weeks and then the bond will be designed and everything. So we received a letter this week, I think today is, okay, I received the letter on Monday, and it came through NBET, which says that they have, the SA Energy has constituted an interministerial committee to look into the debts of the Genco and design solution. So we have written, and the letter will be sent out today, requesting to know why the Gencos are not part of this committee that will look into their debt, reconciling, and all the rest. So we are hoping that we'll get a response. But in the letter, they said in the future, they will include GenCo. So our concerns are two. One, the timeline. What's the timeline for this bond? If by September you're just constituting an interministerial, not even one ministry, interministerial, and we also know the import of committee, and I think there's a famous word that said, if you don't want anything to work, just put it in a committee. So we are having that at the back of our mind. And then the second thing is also the time value of money. The generation companies cannot continue to accumulate debt and still be expected to generate, because the year is coming to an end, and we all know next year is a pre-election year. So we don't want to be called saboteurs. Your second question is on the grid. Yes, we received a letter. We got a regulation from the regulator, which is NEC, a mandatory order asking GenCos to quickly set up free governor mode. It's a technical word. In the grid code, one of the requirements of a generation company is to put their machines on what we call free governor mode. It's one of the means of making the grid stable. For Nigerians that may not know the grid, because I'm bringing this explanation because I was listening to a particular program, and a caller asked if we can beg Dangote to borrow us some cement to cast the grid so that it will stop collapsing. So that's why I'm saying the grid is not actually a structure. It's actually an interface connection, that at least. So so we received that directive. Generation companies are aware of the obligations, but the cost of putting their machines on free governor mode is huge. For example, Egbin power plant with 1,320 megawatt capacity, they have written to their OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, and they gave them a quote of $800,000 to just set up their free governor mode. That is Egbin. So if you're looking at all the various GenCos all setting up free governor mode, in the midst of 5.6 trillion and already accumulating, because September is ending, another potential 200 is adding. So we appealed, we wrote to the regulator, we wrote to NISO and pleading that, see, we agree that the grid code requires that this should be set up. But then in the midst of this huge debt, we do not have money to carry out that. And that, please, we need extension of time. And we got a feedback that by 31st of December, if we have not complied, then we may be disconnected from the grid. And as you know, he that is already on the ground does not fear fall. So we're waiting for that date.
All right. Okay, waiting for that date. Nigerians are not waiting for that date. We don't want that to happen. But let's talk about this liquidity shortfall. The last time you were here, you spoke extensively about it, about the debt owed to the GenCos by obligations from the, from whether it's NERC or other bodies. And we talked about how the president had said he was going to clear these debts through borrowing. We saw then that there was a, there was a legislative glitch or, a legal glitch that wouldn't make that possible. However, you've also cited what's happening in Ghana through the cash waterfall mechanism and how Nigeria could learn some lessons as to how they're able to fund their gas power companies. Can you expand on that? And then why haven't we adopted that? Or is there a possibility for us to adopt that so that we are able to solve these, debt issues and owing here and there?
Thank you so much for that question. In fact, I don't know the time allotted to me, but I had come with about 11-point agenda on solutions for the government.
Brilliant.
If you allow me, I could read from it. But if there is no time, let me quickly respond.
We don't have a lot of time. Maybe just give us very quick, because I think that's a very important point.
Okay.
Very quickly.
All right. So while, yes, I had granted an interview to one of the media persons who wanted to know how we can solve the gas conundrum.
Yes.
And I proposed that solution. For example, in Ghana, like I said, there's a waterfall arrangement. In fact, Ghana had a similar problem of the distribution end not able to pay enough for the GenCos to be able to survive. So the government came together and took a pragmatic solution. So they set up a waterfall arrangement, which is transparent, not a black box. Yeah. Everybody can see. So in that transparent waterfall arrangement, the generation companies were prioritized. They should be paid first. Because if we don't produce, how can you distribute or transmit? But on the other way, Nigeria has a waterfall arrangement, but generation companies are on the bottom. Okay. We have already, but then we operate it in the reverse version. So also in Ghana, they have put together a fund which is, I think, taken from the cost of petrol, like maybe 1 Ghana cedi on top of the cost of petrol, and it is set aside to ensure that gas is made available for power generation. That's another thing that the advisors to the president and decision makers can actually explore. This is Ghana, not America or Canada. Now, another solution that I am also proposing regarding making gas available and making electricity cheaper is government using, the JV. There's a JV between the IOCs and government. Oh, yes. And most of our gas is from associated gas. As you are producing oil, the gas that comes out. So most of the gas we use currently to generate power is through associated gas. So although we would have preferred also the non-associated, because if there's if oil production is low, that means we'll not have enough gas. Yeah. So it would be good. I know the president is doing a lot in the oil and gas sector to also see how he can liberalize that sector and ensure that non-associated gas is dedicated, a quantum is dedicated, a volume is dedicated for the power sector. In fact, we've done that before. During the privatization in 2012-2014, Desiani, the president and the committee came together and formed what we call an MOU with the IOCs. That was where DSO was formed. That is, DSO means domestic supply obligation. Before that time, these gas suppliers were all sending their gas abroad for dollars. But because it will hamper the privatization, the president made a declaration, and through the Ministry of Petroleum, the then Minister of Petroleum, met with the IOCs, and they came up with what we call the DSO quantity. Now, the DSO quantity operates like this. There is a quantum of power, of gas, that should be dedicated to the domestic market. Yes. And any, let's say, Shell, Ajib, so each company has a quantum. Until you meet that target, you cannot export. So Shell, and it is the Ministry of Petroleum that monitors that, but how efficient it is, I don't work in that sector, but I don't know. But similar thing can be done in Nigeria. So what I'm proposing is the government should calculate, because we know how much gas each of the generation companies that use gas needs. For example, we need 1 million score for 4 megawatts. So if you calculate what each thermal genco needs, just calculate that volume and dedicate it to us. And the government should settle the gas suppliers through the JV arrangement. So we don't need to pay the gas suppliers or owe the gas suppliers and receive threat every 2 weeks, every 1 week, phone calls, no rest, letter, threat. The government can handle that. And then we can now generate power. Now, there are 2 benefits to it. One, it will reduce the tariff. Like I told you, every 100 naira of a Genco invoice, 70 to 60 goes to gas. So if 70 naira goes out of our invoice, all you're looking at is just to pay us 40 naira or 30 naira, as the case may be, depending on your efficiency level. So that the government can handle.
Wouldn't people see that as some sort of subsidy?
It is not a subsidy, because gas is the government will still be paying the gas suppliers. It's just that the government, the government is a shareholder in the power sector. You know that it's only the generation companies that are privatized 100%. The distribution companies are 60%, so 40%. Government is a major shareholder in the power sector. So government needs to start playing its role as a shareholder. So that contribution could be a shareholder contribution.
So the power sector is not fully privatized, and government should play that role. But government that is saying their cash trap, maybe they will see that as a form of, okay, you are saying we should pay in advance subsidy, because anyway, they still pay some form through MBET anyway. So what you are just saying is, invariably that money, rather than it goes to MBET and they share among you guys, it goes to gas at some point and they pay in advance so that a part of your inventories are over. But let us go back to this money, because President Tinubu promised. And now we are already hearing stories. That's what I can't understand. The fact that your group was not called to the meeting, the fact that they made a promise when it's been even been discovered that the DMO cannot take more than 900 or 1 trillion again, 800 billion, more than that this year. And that's why when Mr. Zacchaeus was speaking, the FIRS boss, that we are borrowing in tandem with the budget, this 4 trillion was not in the budget. It was an extra borrowing that the president announced just to be able to solve the problem. But as we speak today, you guys might not get that money. And on top of that, they're talking about a governance that you guys need to now put in your own money to, that you don't have money. If all of this is not sorted out by December, what will happen to our grid? And what should Nigerians be preparing for? And you can read some of the solutions. What should we be telling the government at this time? We've sorted out the gas component of the solution now.
Okay.
Also, let's now talk about a sustainable payment plan. Because this 200 billion doesn't cut it every month that they give to the embeds. It doesn't cut it. So what's going to be a sustainable payment plan? Because the government says they have all the revenue they are making now, but they also say they don't have money at the same time. That's why they're removing the subsidies.
Thank you so much for that question, because all the talk we're talking about, pay me today, pay me tomorrow, even the Gencos are tired of it. Because if you are a businessman, you just want to, in fact, in any jurisdiction, a generation company doesn't bother about payment. Its concern is to make its machine available and generate power. But it's only in Nigeria that you're worried about where to get gas. You're worried about how to pay the gas. You're worried about how to be transmitted. You're worried about when it is transmitted, how it will be distributed. You'll get worried about how it will be paid. And then you now worry about your internal issues again. So the role of a Genco in Nigeria is like a catch-22 situation. But I praise the generation companies. They are doing a good job. But I am here to pronounce some solutions, proffer some solutions, not pronounce. I don't have the powers to pronounce to government. So I want to proffer some solutions as somebody who has been in the sector from pre-privatization till date. I believe the president and his handlers are listening to this. And I'm speaking not necessarily in case the Gencos decide that, Joy, we didn't send you to give that solution. I am speaking as a citizen of Nigeria. I've checked my background. My mom, my dad are Nigerians. So, the number one solution we need is political will with a renewed focus on the power sector. Number one solution. Political will. Number two, governance. We want apolitical and experienced appointments to be apolitical and with experienced persons who has the requisite knowledge to hit the ground running and not to learn 4 years on the job. Because after 4 years, their tenure is over and then we start again. The cycle continues. Number three, we need to conduct a viable and independent stress test on the generation, distribution, and transmission capacities to enable us plan proactively and build the sector. Because today, transmission say, I can transmit 8,000. Generation say, I have 14,000 installed. So we need to fix a date where the tripod can say, oh yeah, on your mask, get set, go. Generation, generate, transmit, distribution, take. And let us at each time how much this tripod can take, not just verbal political pronouncement here and there. Number three, there should be a renewed focus on closing the gap between installed and available capacity. You know, as I've mentioned, as at today that I'm sitting with you, we have an installed capacity of 14,000 megawatts installed, that if all things being equal, payments are made, transmission can take, distribution can take and pay, gas suppliers can give us gas, we can generate. But you can see the last time the figures I showed to you, it's about 4,500.
But if you generate 14,000, can this grid carry it?
That is why I'm saying that, because you know the transmission say they have capacity to do 8,000. And we are saying that we are ready to give you that 8,000. But as you all know, power is instantaneous. As you generate, it must be consumed. So if there is no one taking the power, and then somebody will come to the studio and say, and no day we have ever been able to generate 6,000. I can't generate if you cannot take it.
Okay, you have 1 more minute. Do you have a few more solutions?
Yes, sorry.
In 60 seconds.
Okay, ma'am.
Just wrap up.
Thank you. So, like I said, so we should try to see how we can bridge the gap between installed capacity, available capacity, and ability to transmit distribution. So we need to have that. Let me try to run to the bottom bit. Okay. So, number 11, there is need for synergy in all our plans. Distribution companies should not be planning separate from generation and generation planning from distribution. It clearly shows lack of coordination, and that is with all due respect to whoever is in charge.
Real quickly as we wrap up, if you don't fix in that governance component in your grid that they billed you $800,000 for, and the government is saying by 31st of December there's a cutoff date, is it that the grid, you guys will shut down your production?
In 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Nigeria, generation companies are patriotic investors, and we all will agree that patriotism cannot continue to generate power. So the generation companies will do all within its power to keep its machines on. But if we can't get gas, and if we have been disconnected from the grid, clearly we cannot generate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Another day, we'll discuss this grid.
Yes, sir.
Because one of the solutions in the National Electricity Act of 2023 is about the need to decentralize the grid and also to pivot into renewable energy. Absolutely. In fact, the states are to, set up their own grid, distribute, generate, transmit, and all of that. Is that also working or not? But maybe we've run out of time.
Yes.
We can take that up another.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ogaji.